Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and John Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. And today is a tactical day, which means I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jonathan Chai. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. Got a pre-flop focused episode for all the listeners and viewers today. It's probably, I don't know if we've ever had an episode that was like super dedicated to pre-flop, but there's going to be pretty much no post-flop decisions in either of these hands, but they're kind of tricky and weird pre-flop spots that I rarely get in.
Okay. All right. So pre-flop themed episode, which is kind of ironic considering, CPG's like two flagship courses are Pre-Flop Bootcamp and Live Cash Pre-Flop Bootcamp right now. So I guess it's typically makes for a short tactical Tuesday when
this will probably, I mean, who knows? We say that sometimes and we go on for like 27 minutes about one street and one hand that we never expect to talk about, but it's
true.
Perfect. Maybe you can give me some insight into how to play these spots better.
Yeah, we'll see. I think too that a lot of the hands that we share on Tactical Tuesday we share them because they're, just interesting hands. They're tricky spots, interesting hands. I would say that in general, like the most of your win rate's made up not of the trickiest hands. It's made up of, the somewhat like trivial seeming decisions that are made before the flop, or, c-bet sizing, or, just raising at some point and villain just like folds on the turn or the flop, or facing a raise and folding the flop, right? Like, and I think it's just really important to emphasize that like those little bitty decisions are really what ultimately make up the bulk of your win rate as a poker player. And so while, they're not the greatest of hands to break down, because I guess we could do a series of like Tactical Tuesday YouTube shorts or Instagram reels or TikToks type scenarios. But in general, they don't make for, long, robust, interesting conversations. However, that doesn't mean that they're not important. That doesn't mean they're not valuable to think about. So with that out of the way, let's dive in and see what's going on in these pre-flop hands.
Sure.
I don't really know what's going to happen this first one. As the viewers on YouTube can see, you have a king and a seven of different suits in the small blind. So
yeah, you might be disappointed. I actually don't even VPIP this hand, but this hand is just wanted to show this hand so that I can point out the villain that I'm playing against in the next hand.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So we're setting up this hand's used as a setup for hand number two.
Exactly.
So looks like there's a low jack open to 2.5 big, so $25. The hijack 3-bets to 80. John, you fold pre with your king seven. Shocking development there. The big blind cold calls, which not really a thing, but this should be especially terrifying considering that low jack is the tightest opening position and hijack is the hijack 3-bet is like, going to be one of the tightest 3-bet positions. And now low jack cold 4-bets. So low jack has a good hand. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah. It's not a cold 4. It's just a regular old 4-bet. Yeah.
It seems like a cold 4.
Yeah, right. It's like, given all the stuff that's happened so far, it's like,
yeah, they 4-bet, and they don't 4-bet small either. They 4-bet to 300, which is actually quite big. That's on but actually above the threshold of 4-bet sizes that is taught in Pre-Flop Bootcamp and Live Cash Pre-Flop Bootcamp. So
yeah, I think that's actually like the first indicator, right? Like this is so big that I would expect most decent and strong regs in the pool to just be jamming pre-flop instead of using this size if they were to 4-bet in this situation, and probably just play like a jam fold strategy and not like, well, I want to 4-bet. What size should I 4-bet to? Oh my God, it has to be like such a huge portion of everyone's stacks that it's, it almost feels like I'm never folding after four betting to this size.
I don't actually
So-
mind it with the cold caller in there. Like they can make an adjustment when the big
Hmm.
blind cold calls to just
Yeah.
to instead of jamming. Like I think jamming actually leaves money on the table because like there are hands that the big blind's gonna cold call with that would call the four bet but not call a
Mhm.
jam, like
Mhm.
maybe pocket sevens or something, or
Yeah, it just goes call.
right, or it just goes hijack folds after low jack four bets and the big blind calls
Jam,
the
yeah.
30
Oh,
big
it's-
blinds, right? And I think
yeah.
that's like that's a primo opportunity. I actually, yeah, I disagree that I think like I think low jack jamming would probably just not be good. Like I just think
Uh-oh.
it's probably not great.
Okay. It's not going to be a great setup for the next hand then. I thought this size was like just the fact that they four bet here instead of jamming and they picked this really, really big size was something to read into. So I guess our opinions are gonna diverge pretty early on.
I mean, lots of things you typically don't do, but then you do when somebody does something like cold calls.
Okay, let me
the
ask you.
three
Let me
bet to the
let me
big
ask you a
blind.
follow up question then. Would you like this four bet size if Under the Gun is planning on four bet folding?
No.
Okay. Huh. All right. Well, maybe we're not divergent as I thought we were because he four bets to 300 and MP.
Jams,
Mhm.
which again is like this is insanely strong. The big blind folds to the jam, so there we go. We have a data point that the big blind at least probably would have folded to the jam. And then low jack folds. Let's see what they had. So low jack had the ace 10 off, which pretty ambitious, I guess we'll say, to four bet with the ace 10 off. I think that's just ambitious is the wrong word. This is just a punt. So low jack had ace 10 off, hijack had kings, just out of merriment. The big blind had the 7-5 of hearts, just for the lulls. So yeah, like after everything that I said, I think 300 is fine. However, with this exact hand, I think it's probably just no, it's just bad. I think it's
Yeah,
not,
I
it's not
think
good at all.
I think like my opinion was too tainted by the fact that I knew he was gonna four bet to the size and fold.
Mhm.
So okay, so I see this happen. Obviously I don't know that Under the Gun had ace 10 or
Sure.
that MP had kings. When I'm going into my hand, I just see that this guy four bet to some crazy size and then actually folded. Both things were a little bit surprising to me, but kind of enough to like pique my interest. Maybe give this guy some sort of tag. I don't know exactly what he is. Whale, bad reg, fish, could be anything.
I think you could probably discern that MP has like kings or aces or
Well,
aces.
okay, yeah.
I think
MP
that's
has a strong hand. Yeah,
that one's pretty clear.
that's not. Yeah,
The low jack, yeah, that's like again, you're targeting the cold call in the big blind with the bigger than normal four bet,
Mhm.
which just means that you're doing it exploitatively and you're doing it so that you're pushing a lot of equity versus the big blind when they fold, and so you're just going to do it exclusively with like really strong hands.
Yep.
All right, so that's a setup for this hand where you have 2 9s, the Phil Hellmuth special. So we have, yeah, you can break down the action here.
yeah. Under the Gun reg opens to $25. MP fish starting off with about 60 big blinds. Flats the 25. I'm pretty sure we have a fish on the button. This is the guy who cold called the 3-bet with 7-5 of hearts. So I'm doing whatever I can to get in there with all these fine poker players.
Yep.
And so I call, button calls too, I believe. And the guy who four bet to 30 big blinds last hand decides to squeeze here to 20 big blinds, $200. So it's gone 25, call, 200 big blind folds. I think everyone folds around to me. Okay.
Tricksy spot.
Yeah.
So essentially you overcalled with 9s from the cutoff, facing a low jack open and a hijack flat. And the rationale there just makes a lot of sense, right? Like if you 3-bet, you run the risk of getting 4-bet by low jack, and that's just like a very terrible situation. The button is a weak player, so you want to invite them to the party. Plus, if somebody does happen to squeeze, then you have a hand that plays quite well as like an IP call, IP flat. However, against this specific villain who squeezed at 300 and then folded, I imagine your thought or inclination is that their squeeze frequency is probably just too far out of whack.
Yeah.
And
I think they're going to have a very high squeeze and then fold rate.
sure. Right. And even like the reality is like you have a good hand, right? Like this is like, you know, the sixth best hand in Hold'em. We can call it like eighth or so if you add in like ace king and ace king suited, but like it's one of the best hands that you can have. Like just, and all it really takes is villain to be jamming like squeezing with like ace jack off, just ace deuce suited, some sort of like random offsuit broadways. I mean, it doesn't take very, very much for this to just be like a slam dunk, easy mode, rip, facing the squeeze. So
gotcha. So let me just like try to go back to something that you said earlier on. So like first thing that you said was kind of versus like a normal opponent. Were you kind of implying that you do a little bit more flatting here with nines, or maybe just pure flat versus a?
It depends. You know, there's so many different like things that can happen. So like if they squeeze to like 140 or 150, right? And then like low jack could call, hijack could call. Like the smaller it is, like the button could call too. And
I guess I was asking in this specific scenario, like let's just assume we didn't know anything about the small blind. We hadn't seen that first hand before. How would you just be flatting the spot with nines, or would you still be jamming?
It's a hard question to ask because like I think that we're using previous information to help make this decision. We're actually using like in-game information to make the decision to flat nines in the first place. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess
Okay.
the reality is I'm not exactly sure what I would do.
Yeah.
If we,
I guess like
no
another way to ask
information.
what I was trying to ask was like, are you only jamming nines here because of what we know about the small blind
It
previously?
doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it certainly doesn't hurt that
Okay.
that we have that previous information from this same villain that you know 4-bet to a too big size and then just folded to the jam. So yeah, like, and the size of it's gonna have an impact as well, right? Like I think like if it's a little bit smaller, then maybe flatting goes up in value, especially with the button who can, you know, overcall. And I think playing it 3 ways is going to be a pretty good spot. I think you're definitely going to turn a profit playing the spot 3 ways multi-way with the button in the mix. But once they size up, it makes it less likely that, you know, the button calls, and then, you know, we're playing in a scenario that I think is like much worse than it could have been. But yeah, as it is, I think it's just a pretty slam dunk jam with nines. If they happen to have one of the bigger pairs, and they happen to have one of the bigger pairs. But
so I jam and button folds, and the small blind snaps, probably sub 3-second call. I figured, wow, he just has one of the bigger pairs. How could this happen?
Yeah. Yep. So they squeezed to 200 and then called off for their stack for another 800 more. Flop is king 7 deuce. Turns a 3.
I feel like we just can't be doing well
5.
versus the snapping range, right? On this run out.
I wouldn't think. Come on, ace queen, I guess.
Ace queen. Oh.
And the reveal is jack 10 of clubs, which, yeah, this is somebody that really, really loves hands pre-flop. Like they're like that friend that just, you know, falls in love with every person that they meet in 5 minutes. Like this villain, like, man, the jack 10 of clubs, let's go. Let's just put in 100 bigs. I'm in love. Let's spend our life together.
Would have hurt to lose this flip. It's funny, again, another like roller coaster of emotions before show. You know, as soon as he snaps, right? And I'm like, oh my god, like so unlucky, just has queens plus. Then you see Jack 10, you're like, wow, great, I'm flipping. This is so much better than where I thought I was 2.5 seconds ago. And then you're like, oh my God, how am I flipping in this spot?
Well, how are you flipping this not
Right.
ace king, right? Like it's not an
Yeah.
actual good hand. How are you flipping with Jack 10 of
Right,
clubs?
right.
Well, with all this said, I think this means pretty good things as it relates to like villain squeezing and then snapping it off with like 8s through 6s, probably.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
they're definitely gonna have those hands in there. So yeah, your jam just has to make money versus this villain strategy. But that's whew, they almost came through with their Jack 10 of clubs, but alas, fell short by not flopping any draw or any pair.
The King 7 Deuce 3-5 run out for the podcast listeners. No Jack, no 10.
No nothing, no draw, just a pair draw that they whiffed. And there you go. So 15 minutes on a pre-flop decision. Maybe we can just talk about, folding versus 3-bets pre sometime. That'll be a whole Tactical Tuesday episode. I guess coming up after the break, we've got more pre-flop decisions for you. So stick around. And that's it. I have no great segue for the break this time. No plug. Just stick around and get bedazzled by pre-flop scenarios.
The decision to enter a hand is fundamental to poker strategy. Too tight, and they know what you have. Too loose, and you're easy to run over. Pre-Flop Bootcamp from Chasing Poker Greatness is a comprehensive guide to locking down your pre-flop game and creating true range advantage. 8 days of guided training, over 60 optimal ranges, and access to a dedicated community of players that will push your pre-flop game from a place of weakness to your greatest strength. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp. Available now. In a world where a fish donk bets the flop, and you don't know what to do, one man,
Coach Brad Wilson,
has a surefire plan to neutralize flop leads and rip that dunk to shreds. Nuffle. Available now. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/nuffle. Rated R. 100 NL player, former Sergeant Elijah Shears.
Before I got Nuffle, I had run into a lot of donk bets, and I think once you play a certain amount of hands, you know there's something wrong with our opponent's strategies, but you don't know how to play to maximize EV against it, and it's very frustrating. I looked at the document and I couldn't believe that I paid money for it. I actually doubted that it could provide value because it was so brief. But since then, it's repaid me just over and over and over again. And it's one of the most consistent moneymakers built into my strategy that sheds light on just how bad your opponents are. And it took me 20 minutes to perfect it, and it's just amazing. Yeah, I'm speechless. It's just that good. The simplicity of it is part of it being a masterpiece.
Nuffle. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/courses.
All right. So here we are, pre-flop land once again in this episode of Tactical Tuesday. We only have one hand for you after the break, so let's make it a doozy. What do you say, John?
Yeah. So this hand starts with under the gun. Opening to
$50.
$50. 5 big blinds. Not only is this just big, but it's really big for this guy because under the gun, as you might have guessed, is a fish who has many opening sizes. He has limp, he has 3x, and the occasional 5x, I guess. So I would expect this hand to be stronger than probably just be this range to be comprised of like the strongest hands, given that he has 3 opening sizes pre-flop. And I think the easiest assumption to make until proven otherwise is that they just size linearly with the strength of their hand.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's what I'm going to go with here.
Yeah. It's a good theory. who knows? Maybe they just want to play
Jack 10 suited
$50
really badly.
Yeah, $50 hand pre-flop instead of a $20 hand. Let's see. It's, I mean, again, like when we expect poker to be played in like this kind of predictable fashion where people raise with a very specific range from various positions and use very specific sizes, or a spectrum of like 2 big blinds to 2.5 big blinds. And the reality is that in the wild, people just do what the hell they want, right? Like this is no limit Texas Hold'em. You have almost infinite ways to play hands and infinite ways of, just structuring your bet sizes and your lines and just stringing them all together. So you really have to be able to think dynamically and really think critically and try to discern what's going on here when facing a 5x open, for instance, and you have queens in the big blind. I mean, I let me ask you this: like, are you even happy that like you get queens in the big blind, right? And you're like, oh, sweet, and then you see the 5x open, and then how do you feel?
I don't know how to feel. I really just don't know how to feel, because I'm like, well, this guy has a really good hand, which is pretty good news when I have queens. But is his hand so good that it's not good news when I have queens?
Right. Yeah, you feel much better with kings, and you feel much worse with jacks.
Okay, here's another question. If this guy opens to 5x and someone 3-bets before the action gets to me, a reg 3-bets, are you just folding queens?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even want to think about it, because it's
you don't want to tell the world that
of
there's situations where you fold queens.
I mean, there are technically supposed to be situations where you fold queens. I mean, it's going to depend on like where the reg is, I guess. Like hijack reg, oh my god, like low jack versus hijack. Oh, I don't even know. I don't know, John.
What do you? I mean, no one's 3-bet, and we still don't know what to do. Like,
yeah.
Do I 3-bet? Do I just flat the 50 and like basically just try to set mine and not get stacked on a low
bet?
Okay.
I just think the hand's going to play much better as a 3-bet than a flat, because I just think like the value, there's still value to be had here. I don't know what to do versus like a rip. You may want to fold versus like a 4.
I would fold versus a rip.
Jam.
I'd be so
right.
Happy
So you still have an out if they jam, and if you would fold versus jam, then that kind of means that like you're anticipating that they put a lot of their higher equity hands in their jamming range, which means that like when they call that path post flop, like you have an edge and you're pushing equity versus their calling range. So I think that like when you 3-bet, you open up 2 paths, one where they jam a lot of their highest equity hands and then you can fold. 2, they flat with more of their lower equity hands and you're feeling pretty good about your situation. So like for all those reasons, I think 3-betting is better than flatting, because when you just flat, you still don't really know what's going on. You're just kind of hoping.
Yeah. Interestingly, so I do 3-bet, and none of the scenarios that you were planning for happen.
Well, they just click it.
Oh, come on.
Well, that is a thing that can happen, and now I'm feeling much, 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 much worse about your place in the world right now.
Almost feels worse than when they jam, right? You're like, wow, this is
no, jamming feels worse.
You might have ace king.
Jamming feels worse. But they click it to 250. So the action was 50, 150, 250. I think when they click it, it's not great, but if you flop a set and stack them, you're getting like 10-1. So it's like really, really close as to like whether you're essentially like set mining here.
That's all I'm thinking about here, right? Is like, am I getting the right price to set mine for an extra $100?
I think so. I think, and two, like you're getting the right price and you just want to take the opportunity. While you
maybe I can flop an open ender, and check call there.
Gut shot plus an overpair.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Doesn't need to be a set.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll just bet $50 on every street.
Oh man, this never happens, right? You never peel the extra 100 and actually get this flop. You just get like you usually get like the 8-4 deuce flop, check they jam, and you're like, am I gonna make a bad call here?
Yeah,
with queens?
that sound of ecstasy was the sound of John just flopping top set on Queen 4 deuce rainbow. SPR's a little bit over one. 505 in the pot. They got 629 and life is good. They just bet pot.
Yeah, this is just too much. I can't handle it.
Yeah, they bet pot on the flop, leaving themselves with 122 behind. Good luck.
Maybe I should trap.
Good luck, villain. Turn tray, which that's a pretty sweaty turn. River 10, so nothing, and villain shows the kings. So everything I said about them jamming pre-flop, I guess they also take some of their highest equity hands and stick it in their min click 4-bet range as well. So yeah, I think way to go. Way to flop top set. I guess
gift from God on the flop.
Yeah, gift from the poker gods. You deserve it. I don't know why, but I'm just gonna imagine that you've done something to appease them in some way that means that you deserve to flop top set here.
I fold queens every time I get jammed on in this spot. So the gods were like, you know what? When you peel the click, we should reward you for your discipline.
Yeah. This is your reward for typically being such a little baby. All right.
Well, I'll be a baby when they have kings. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I agree. Good show. Good stuff. That's all I got for you.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter, join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter at CPG Podcast. Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.